Hello, everyone. Welcome to our quarterly connections. We have a great presentation planned for you today. We're excited to have you. My name is Lisa Stoner. I am the coordinator for the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative. I'd like to start with a quick overview of the quarterly connections meetings. We welcome you to our website. We're going to drop a link to that. You likely have already seen it. With this quarterly connections, we are hoping to address the most important and pertinent topics for our dark sky advocates and community. And as you can see on our website, we started in April when we heard from Ruskin Hartley, the executive director of the Dark Skies International. Last June, we actually heard from Dr. Emily Wilkins regarding the research around dark skies recreationists in national parks and state parks in Utah. It was focused on economic development opportunities. And today, we're excited to have Samuel Singer and Kate Magargal speaking to you about education and outreach and advocacy. Our conversation today will focus on how to promote partnerships and community engaged learning around dark skies in gateway towns and rural communities. Matthias is joining us as a support to me today. Thank you, Matthias. We have a planning team that I'm very grateful who have helped with identifying our topics and preparing for these meetings. So thank you to our planning team today. I do have a little bit of etiquette, Zoom etiquette, and housekeeping. Everybody is, I'm sure, very familiar. If you would address your screen so that your name is showing, perhaps your affiliation, that's always nice, so we know who we're with today. We will be using the chat function. You're welcome to have your videos on or off, and we hope that you will continue to mute yourself unless you are speaking. This session will be recorded and will be available on the Quarterly Connections website. So I'd like to introduce our two speakers. Today, our topic will be focused on how to promote partnerships and community engaged learning around dark skies in gateway towns and rural communities. I'd like to introduce Dr. Kate Magargal. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Lisa. My name's Kate Magargal, and I'm currently kind of here in a role as a researcher and instructor at the University of Utah. I'm involved with the minor in dark sky studies here at the University of Utah, where I've been working with students for the past few years. I'm going to talk about that more when it's my turn to present. But I've had quite a few different roles in the dark sky community over the years. Over a decade ago now, I was in the National Park Service's Night Skies program. I was a physical scientist for them, traveling around the country, measuring light pollution or measuring darkness, however you want to swing that. And I've also been a part of a number of different groups that have sought various forms of designation as dark sky places throughout Utah, including parks and towns. So I've gotten to see this movement from a few different angles, and I'm happy to continue to be a part of it.
Thanks, Kate. Samuel Singer is joining us from Jackson, Wyoming. He is the director and executive founder of Wyoming Stargazing. I'd love to have you introduce yourself as well. Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you, Lisa. Pleasure to be here. Hi, everybody. I'm Samuel Singer. And as Lisa said, I run an astronomy outreach program called Wyoming Stargazing here in Jackson, Wyoming. I'll tell you more about that when I present. But among other things, we've been promoting dark sky education and advocacy here for about a decade now. And as my colleague John Barentine knows, who's on the call, we are making some really amazing headway. So I'm looking forward to sharing more about that with you in a little while.
Thanks, Samuel. Great. One thing that we have done with these meetings, I have found quite useful, as one of our goals with these meetings is to bring people together and create an atmosphere where we can connect on dark sky issues, engage, and build the community. I'm learning a lot, and I'm excited about some of the opportunities I've had in the last couple of years to get to know you. So what I'd like to do next, with Matthias's help, in the chat, there's a Google Doc. And if you would like to open that up now, it's shareable. Everybody has access to edit. And if you could just pick a line, you can actually put your own name and where you're from, perhaps, or your organizational affiliation, whichever you prefer. And perhaps you could answer a couple of quick questions. This just we'll just spend about 3 to 5 minutes on this. What is the dark sky work you're involved with? Maybe what motivates you to do this work? And I will share my screen to do that. We have Mark Bassett from Nevada Northern Railway. Great to have you. Julie McGrew, Kelly Ricks, Sonia Papelka from Dinosaur, Sarah Hink, Allison, John Barentine, Didier, Rich Senge from Kanab. It's great to have you all. Okay, we'll just give it another couple minutes. This is a document that I will be sharing, and we can edit it so that everyone feels comfortable with this information. Today's discussion, I really was excited to hear from Kate Magargal. Kate works at the University of Utah and has a course that she directs that I'd like to have her share a bit. She has students in the communities working to promote dark skies and educating locals. And some of you are on this call today may already have worked with Kate. So we're excited for that opportunity to reconnect. So Kate, I know you've worked with 3, I'm gonna let you speak to and provide your presentation, then we'll follow with some questions, and then we'll proceed to Samuel. So Kate, if you'd like to share your screen.
How does that look?
It looks great.
Okay.
Take it away, Kate.
All right. Well, so what I would like to share with you all today is a little bit about how community engagement works through the format of the minor in dark sky studies and the class that I teach here at the University of Utah. And I think that in so doing, there's sort of some broader ideas and lessons that, you know, maybe we can discuss a little bit, or just to throw out into the world from this particular format of engagement. Okay, so yeah, the way I think about this is that there are many kind of tools and ways to build community around an issue like dark skies. It's also kind of something that I think happens around a lot of different issues, not limited to dark skies. So I mentioned already that we have this minor here at the University of Utah. It's unique in the world, as far as I know still, as a program of study for undergraduates who can take this minor regardless of their major program of study. And the idea of this minor is for them to engage with a whole bunch of different types of fields of understanding, realms of knowledge, and really take this transdisciplinary approach to understanding real world problem solving. So there's a certain sort of perspective here where we don't silo ourselves in one specific, field of study, astronomy, anthropology, economics, but we actually try to bring knowledge from all different sort of realms of understanding to bear to try to understand and tackle, in this case, the issue of managing and maintaining our dark skies. And in the class that I teach, it's just called Nightscapes, and it's all about trying to understand sort of the human interaction with the night and what the consequences are of that for us humans ourselves. I take this approach around collective action. This is actually the sort of splash slide for one of the lectures that I give in the class. We use this framework of collective action to sort of think about and frame the issue of light pollution. Here are just some basic concepts for us today to just think about that idea of collective action. A collective action problem, just very classic type of problem, is a situation in which all individuals would be better off cooperating, but fail to do so because of conflicting interests between those individuals that tend to discourage joint action. In other words, these are problems that are created by individuals who are making rational choices for themselves, but in so doing, the result is some undesirable consequences for everyone else. And a couple other sort of characteristics of this is that there's this idea of self-interest, which is something that we all have, making decisions for ourselves, attending to personal needs or desires, which usually achieves better results for us on the individual and usually shorter time scale. We benefit from others without incurring a cost in many cases. And it's usually generally cheaper and more convenient for us to act in our own self-interest. And I'm contrasting this against cooperative actions, working together towards shared goals, which usually achieves better average results for everybody involved, but is on a longer time scale. So we have short-term versus long-term time scales here. Sometimes it's costly and nearly impossible to police or to kind of understand how to, get everyone involved. And individuals participating in this often have to do so at their own inconvenience or adding a little bit of cost to themselves. And so using this framework to understand light pollution, we kind of move forward as a class and try to grapple with some of the issues that communities in Utah, at least, and it's common to communities all over the world, engage with when they're trying to dig into how to maintain their dark nights or restore their dark nights. Of course, I sort of start by framing this as a problem. Hopefully you all have had a chance to kind of grapple with, what is the issue of light pollution? There's some previous talks, I think, earlier this year about that. And then we sort of move into the solutions. And I think that the building community around the night and light pollution is a big kind of form of solution. So involved in collective action solutions are determining collective goals. And these are both sort of descriptive and measurable goals, determining what actions are necessary, both on an individual and a collective level. And in some cases, creating incentive or disincentive systems, lighting ordinances being one example of that for light pollution. So this is where our activities with the students often come in. We have had engagements with 3 different towns in Utah. 2 of them are the designated dark sky cities, Torrey and Helper, and a 3rd town that has a recent lighting ordinance, the town of Bluff. And the way we involve the students in those communities is as learners, educators, and supporters of whatever the interest of the community is around dark sky issues. A lot of this is kind of community self-organized. So it's coming we get requested by communities to come and visit their community and learn what's going on there and also bring information frequently. This picture here on the right is actually within the town of Helper. We had a community meeting with the students. This was actually in 2020, right before the pandemic. So we got that trip in before everything changed. And we had a great community discussion where the students and the community members, I think, kind of learned from each other and were able to raise a bunch of different issues going on there. Yeah, and here's some more pictures of that kind of stuff. The sort of blurry picture on the top there is the students taking some light measurements there in the town of Helper. Same thing with the bottom left there. I think that was in Torrey. we're using a light there to just take the picture, but they're actually taking an illuminance measurement of some areas around Torrey. And on the bottom right there is one of our students just ready with some equipment to take some measurements. So a lot of times what happens is we use these visits to towns as a learning opportunity for the students to, practice taking some measurements, which is part of their sort of learning objective in the class, is to understand how we actually think of and measure light. And then we try to share that information as much as we can with some understanding that, these are learners and may have varying levels of accuracy. But usually just the fact that light can be measured in the ways that in which it is measured is useful information to the communities. Just a couple more examples of this. Here are some measurements that we took of luminance, which is one way of understanding what light is like to the observer, so to a person walking around. Won't get into the details of those measurements now, but students were collecting this around Torrey. Here's another picture of students kind of trying to understand the contribution of light pollution from a gas station, also in that area, and having some fun taking pictures as well. And yeah, I thought here's kind of our group with our visit to Torrey last spring. There have been lots of different lessons that we've learned here, both I think from the student perspective and from the community perspective. One of those lessons is that, it takes a lot of different types of efforts to create this community building. And for the students, from the students' vantage point, at least, one of the great things about these engagements is that they get to kind of see things happening in the real world. We get outside of the classroom and we learn all about what lighting ordinances are kind of in practice, some things, challenges and accomplishments around lighting retrofits in some of these towns. And we hear all kinds of different sort of discussions from community members. Some of them are really celebratory and excited, and some of them also are about the challenges of, what does it mean to be a dark sky place? What are all the questions around that? Like, how does it actually economically benefit those places, et cetera? From the community standpoint, the major thing that I think is achieved is also around community building. Folks from those communities seeing that there's a value to their dark sky efforts. I think people tend to be really excited to get the perspective and just sort of the influx of energy from students visiting their communities. And there is some informational exchange, as I mentioned earlier, where the students are coming, not as fully bloomed experts, but as people who have some background in, explaining and practicing explaining some of the concepts around preserving dark skies. And understanding lighting design and things like that. And that is kind of serves as inspiration many times for communities to further their efforts in even getting the word out to their own community about these efforts going on and kind of what to do next with some of this stuff. Yeah, so with that, I will stop my share screen. I think I'll turn it back to you, Lisa.
Great. Kate. Thank you. That was wonderful. I loved those pictures of your students working in the communities. I thought if we have some questions from the audience, we can pursue some of those. We also have time reserved at the end, so we can speak more as a group after Samuel has a chance to speak as well. Kate, I wanted to ask you quickly, could you explain again, how did you get started working with these communities? What is the process?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I should mention that I'm interested in what other communities out there might feel that they would benefit from this type of field trip of students coming around. I see a note there from someone in Alta to that effect. But how do communities get involved with the class? It's really, contacting me, I think, is the biggest way to do that. But the way that that has historically happened is really born from this idea of community building itself. I'm someone who actually lived in the area near Torrey. I worked at Capitol Reef National Park for a while, and I did a lot of work there just kind of as a community member some years ago around the issues of dark skies. And so I'm sort of personally a known entity there. We had a similar networking history with another colleague who was involved with our minor in dark sky studies, who has just been involved with the Helper arts community for a long time. And so that's how we got connected with the town of Helper. Bluff is a little different. They, as a community, had decided to pass a lighting ordinance, and they were in the process of, reaching the date where that ordinance would go into effect. And they were just really looking for sort of like a workshop or some sort of community informational service. And so we worked with them to try to develop some informational stuff, and the students conducted a virtual workshop with them. I think that was in the spring of 2021. So that worked out really well because unfortunately Bluff is really far from us. So it would have been hard to drive there. But we were able to do just like on Zoom, similar to what we're doing right now. And so, yeah, it's kind of all different ways. I think the minor in dark sky studies is excited to work with different communities. I think as with most of the efforts, there's a real like capacity issue. I would love to like do nothing but take students all around the state. But even then, there's only so much that one class can accomplish in a semester that's being held once a year. And so I think that, I would, if you're a member of a community or a leader in a community, maybe see this as like one potential tool in the toolkit of a bunch of different things that might be available. But definitely interested to talk to folks more about that.
Thanks, Kate. One thing we talked about last week when we were kind of preparing for this discussion was, the importance of having the local voice. So, and you essentially were part of the local community in that you worked there and you were a face and a name, and were the consistency. That seems to be a really important part too. So I really appreciate your efforts. It looks like, according to our chat, by the way, there are quite a few people interested in talking with you, but because you're just one person, and as I think we all know, it's important that we spread the word and build this community and build the skill set that we have. So I do encourage anyone to, perhaps send a message to Kate, but to recognize that she has her own constraints that she's working with. But it's an awesome thing that you're doing. Thank you so much for sharing what you're doing at the U, and good luck as you continue on.
Thanks, Lisa. I did just want to mention that I put my email address in the intro document that was linked earlier, and I don't know that I can follow up just from the chat, but if anyone who identified themselves as being part of an interested community, if you would email me, we can start a conversation from there. And yeah, love to hear from you.
Perfect. Thank you. So thank you for that. And we can circle back to questions as they come. Unless anyone has a pending question right now, it looks like we can move forward, but hold on to those questions if something comes up, because we want to hear. I'm going to shift gears and introduce Samuel Singer. Thank you, Samuel, for joining us from Jackson today. And you have done a lot of work with your community. You are a professional educator. You have also done some really important work, as you mentioned, John Barentine, with his support in the Teton County and in the town of Jackson, and the Grand Tetons National Park, helping with their lighting ordinances. So you have a lot to share. I'm going to let you share your screen and present your talk today. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Lisa. Thanks so much for having me. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So we are celebrating 10 years at Wyoming Stargazing this year, which is really exciting. I can't believe it's been a decade. And really, since the beginning, part of our work has been dark sky advocacy. And we've approached that in several different ways that has been interwoven with all the types of programs that we've done over the years. So I want to share a little bit about what we do at Wyoming Stargazing broadly, and then narrow it down to specifically what we've done with dark sky advocacy. So our flagship programs are our stargazing programs. We started really small, doing a free monthly stargazing program out in a parking lot, and that has grown into offering about 45 free public stargazing programs every year and several hundred private stargazing programs each year. During the summertime, we sometimes get 50 to 100 people who attend our free public stargazing programs, and the private stargazing programs are much smaller. We do most of those in Grand Teton National Park. So we have a staff of about 8 stargazing leaders in the summertime, which is our biggest season. As you can imagine, it's a little bit harder to convince people to go out stargazing in Jackson in the winter. But we do get some diehards who do that. And so we program all year long with our stargazing programs. And each of those programs is an opportunity to talk to people about the night sky. And really, it begins early in the programs when we're either doing the free public programs or the private stargazing programs. One of the first questions we get is, why are we out here in this remote place, or why are we driving away from Jackson for our stargazing program? So it's an opportunity to talk about the fact that even though Jackson's a small town, there's light pollution. And by getting half an hour away, we're going to be able to enjoy the night sky much more fully. So that's really how we segue stargazing programs into conversations about dark sky advocacy. We also do programming during the day, and that's been another huge way that we've been able to engage the public with thinking about the sky, even if it's just looking at the sun through specialized solar telescopes. And so during the summer months, we offer a free solar astronomy program each week at a local's farmer's market. And again, we get between 50 to 100 people who come and look through our solar scopes every week. And we have a lot of literature out there about dark sky awareness. And so it's another opportunity to talk to folks about why we love dark night skies and why we think it's so important. So we do have a formal campaign to protect dark night skies, which we call our Save Our Night Skies campaign. And we really started that campaign in earnest about 8 years ago with a kickoff event. And I want to emphasize the importance of that. At the time, Wyoming Stargazing was a fairly new organization, and we hadn't made a ton of community connections yet. But we knew there was a vibrant arts community. And so we partnered with some organizations that had offices in the Center for the Arts. And we came up with an idea of how we could interface what we wanted to do with night sky advocacy and educational awareness about light pollution with art. And what we came up with was what we called the Up Yard Art Show. We had a bunch of old telescopes that had been donated to us, and we found local artists who were willing to donate their time and materials to paint those telescopes, and we auctioned them off at this Up Yard Art Show. And so I think we had nearly 200 people in attendance this night. And it wasn't folks who would typically come out to our stargazing program. So it really kind of broadened our community outreach. And it was another huge opportunity for us to talk to people about why dark night skies were important to us and why we thought it should be important for them to think about as well. And so we didn't only do the telescope auction that night, excuse me. We also presented a ton of information about light pollution, both flyers that we created and books. Some of the titles you probably recognize there. So that's really how it all started about 8 years ago. And since then, we've done a lot of other types of community outreach that have really helped us along in our journey towards the goal of getting dark sky certification from the International Dark Sky Association for Jackson, Teton County, and Grand Teton National Park. So one of the things we've done is dark sky monitoring. At first, similar to what you just heard about, we had students from local high schools out and our own volunteers collecting dark sky measurements using handheld SQM meters. More recently, we have some photometers installed permanently, one in downtown Jackson and one out in Grand Teton National Park that collect continuous measurements of the night sky. And those are available on our website. So just another way that we're trying to engage folks. We've also been hosting an annual event for the last few years, our Lights Out Challenge. Very similar to the Lights Out challenges that you've probably heard of in other communities. I think it started in Michigan with seeing how many people you could get to commit to turn their lights off on a specific evening or even a specific time frame in a certain evening. So we've had some big success having community events around that once a year, roughly in line with the Perseid meteor shower, give or so a week or two for that. And just another way for us to connect people in terms of talking about preserving dark night skies. We have had the great pleasure with collaborating with several other people who you may know. Dr. Brian Bollinger has helped us out multiple times over the past several years in conducting exterior lighting inventories for Grand Teton National Park, and most recently for the town of Jackson and Teton County. And his reports are incredibly comprehensive. And so part of what he does as a professor is travels around and does exterior lighting inventories, which are an incredibly important part in pursuing dark sky certification from the IDA. And so he has been absolutely amazing with his work in presenting incredibly detailed documents for the town of Jackson, Teton County, and Grand Teton National Park, so they know the work they have ahead of them in order to receive certification from the IDA. And as a side note, Brian also brings his students out for these inventories, and he's developed a really cool relationship with the town of Jackson, where his students are going to be working with city planners to help figure out how they're going to get all of their lights into compliance over the next several years for the smallest cost possible. So it's a really cool way for us to work towards our goals of getting dark sky certification, but also for Brian's students to get some amazing experience working with city planners. And last, but not certainly not least, we have been collaborating with Dr. John Barentine, excuse me, for, I don't know, John, it's probably been at least 8 years since the very beginning. And John has helped us work with the Jackson Town Council and Teton County for them to revamp their exterior lighting standards, part of their land development regulations. Another crucial part in pursuing dark sky certification. When we first approached them with John's help 8 years ago, nobody had really heard about the importance of dark sky preservation. There were some words in the town comprehensive plan, but it wasn't really being thought about or talked about. And so we got a lukewarm reception back then. We just revamped the exterior lighting standard again just last year. At this time, we had unanimous support of every person on the city council, the Teton County commissioners, and every city and county planner. They were enthusiastic to help us write a new exterior lighting standard. And so it's been really, really encouraging over this past year to see how all of our work has played out to create this this momentum and awareness around the importance of preserving dark night skies. So we now have an exterior lighting standard in Teton County that would qualify for dark sky certification, and we're so close for getting that for the town of Jackson. And my understanding, having spoken with some administrators in Grand Teton National Park, that they are considering pursuing dark sky certification as well as early as January. So we're really excited about how we've been able to help the community along, increase awareness about dark sky, the importance of dark skies. And yeah, over the next year, as we're actually able to start to help the town and the county write their applications for the IDA certification, we're enthusiastic about then helping individual citizens make good decisions about how they can reduce light pollution in their homes and in their businesses. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share all this with you. Happy to take any questions. And with that, I'll just say thank you for listening. And yeah, looking forward to chatting with you.
Thank you, Samuel. That was wonderful. Again, fantastic pictures. I want to be up there. I think you said earlier today might be raining. So anyway, thank you for that presentation. And I'm really excited about some of the things you talked about and the creative ways that you have engaged with your community, such as that Upyard Light Art Festival. That was really cool. So thanks for sharing those pictures of those old telescopes. That was really neat. I think it's really great that you've incorporated the Lights Out campaign with your community. I'm curious, I'm going to ask the group if people would be willing to share through our chat kind of things that they've done as well. I'll ask that in just a moment, but really the kind of work you're doing in Jackson, you've been doing this for a long time, so congratulations for your accomplishments there. And one thing I asked you in our pre-meeting was your visitors largely to your facility, your Wyoming Stargazing, you have weekly. How many people show up to your weekly events? Could you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, it definitely varies throughout the year. So the summer is our peak season. So sometimes as many as 100 people in the summer. And when we chatted earlier, you had asked me about, how are folks showing up in terms of their awareness of dark night skies, and why are they even showing up to our events? And it really covers the entire spectrum. We get some enthusiastic amateur astronomers who are on, dark sky road trips, and they're looking for all the places they can go in the Intermountain West to experience really dark night skies. And they specifically choose Jackson as one of those locales, and they look us up because they're looking for someone who has bigger telescopes than they could pack in the back of their car to take a look at the night sky. And so we get folks like that. And then we get folks who just happen to be visiting Jackson for totally different reasons, for the wildlife, for the mountains. And they happen to ask their, hotel concierge, hey, what can we do at night here? And the concierge tells them, oh, well, you can go stargazing with Wyoming Stargazing for free on Thursday nights, or you can do a private program any night of the week. And so we get folks who, have no background in amateur astronomy, who ever really thought about the night sky, who just, hear about us word of mouth when they're in town, and they show up. And then everybody in between as well, folks who have lived in the big cities their whole lives and are really excited about visiting Jackson, not just for the wildlife and the mountains, but also to experience a dark night sky.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. You're definitely working with a broad group. And then specifically working with your communities, you have the community around Jackson, you have Teton County. Have you, in your education efforts, do you use flyers within, within the building, with building permits, in your local utilities, things like that? Are there opportunities that you have pursued there?
Yeah, great question. We've tried several different things over the years. So with the help of Teton County and the town of Jackson, we actually created a lighting reference sheet. I think I showed it briefly, or part of it at least, on one of my slides. And that reference sheet is available for everyone who applies for a building permit. I think it's part of the like the packet that they get. And so, at this point, I think if not all, most, engineers and architects in town have seen that reference sheet, because they have to be in compliance with it for the homes and businesses that they design. And so I think that reference sheet has gone a long way. It's basically a summary of the exterior lighting standard, but a little bit more accessible. So I think that's been a really important piece to reach, that part of the population that is hugely important in terms of, the development of what we see for lighting over, the next several years and beyond that. Having that awareness in the minds of the architects and the engineers is huge. We've also done mailers. There's an organization in town that will basically do the mailers through the post office for you. And so for our Lights Out Challenge, we found that that's one of the most effective ways to reach basically everybody in town. It's not a cheap way to do it, but we found it to be more effective than emailing and social media posts. Actually getting a postcard into somebody's hands with a really cool image on it that they might want to keep, I think has been successful. And then, flyers up in community meeting places, community calendars. And then there's some listservs in town run by the Community Foundation that can get out to all the other nonprofits in town. So spreading the word that way has also been really important for us.
I think you have a wonderful example of success with all the hard work you've done. You mentioned going to city council meetings and being consistent. You're there. The message is the same, bringing people in and finding a narrative. I'm actually quoting John again, finding a narrative that they can support. So your flyers have been beneficial. Your consistency has been beneficial. And I think that's a really important take home with these discussions of, your presence.
I've lost track of how many city council meetings I've attended at this point, but I do believe that my presence there has been important over the years. They all know who I am, and when they see me in town, they think dark skies.
Yeah, well, it just definitely shows. That's really great. But I do have a question for you all, to our community participants today. Perhaps if you would like to open the chat and just kind of, the question I'd like to ask is like, what kinds of things have you done with your communities? Whether you work for the park, or within a gateway community, what kinds of things have you done working to educate the community about dark skies? We'd love to know, hear from you. So you could make sure if you do send something to the chat, make sure it goes to everyone. And I'm wondering, so Kate, well, I'm going to ask you a question now. Would you talk to us a little bit about your involvement with the Heritage Star Fest? Again, kind of harkens back to what you talked about. You used to be a resident, I think, of Torrey in Utah, and I understand there's a group, the Entrada Institute, that is also works with the Capitol Reef National Park Service. I'm curious about that event, like how it got started, how has it evolved? Any comments about economic benefits that you might have seen to the community by running this Star Festival?
Sure. Yeah, I can give you kind of the story in a nutshell of that. So in 2008, a while back, I was living in a town near Torrey, and I was also kind of working with the Park Service in their Night Skies program, which is now the Night Skies and Natural Sounds division. It's changed names. I'm sorry if I said that a little bit wrong, but and I was invited because of my work with the Park Service to give a talk in this sort of weekly community talk series that the Entrada Institute holds at a location in Torrey. And I gave a talk about light pollution, which, you know, was at the time like a pretty standard International Dark Sky Association type of talk, just informational and things like that. And it really captured the interest of, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 community members who were present at the talk. And they were just like so blown away. I mean, I think that's been my experience doing all kinds of outreach across the region, is that once people learn about the issue, they become really activated and are really excited and interested in what can be done, and in thinking about this more in all kinds of ways. But anyway, so some folks reached out to me, and we just sort of formed a group and decided to launch this astronomy festival. At the time, it was just sort of a loosely affiliated group of people. And that astronomy festival, it's called the Heritage Star Fest, started in 2009. It was pretty small when it began, and you know, we tried to invite the participation of mostly community members, not quite as much visitors, but mostly community members, to both run the programming and to attend the programming. So it was really all from the community itself. Over the years, the Entrada Institute and Capitol Reef National Park both became more involved and invested in the Starfest, and now they jointly run it with events both in the park and up in the communities outside of the park. And I think that evolution has been really great. It's really obtained sort of consistent support. And, you know, it also gets the attention of people who might just be passing through the area as visitors to the park and the surrounding areas. One of the things I would just kind of put forward as a challenge that I think that the Starfest has always had, and maybe still continues to have, is to broaden its sort of scope to include those who are in the community who aren't kind of traditionally involved with that kind of event. We had done some early outreach to like the local 4-H club, Boy Scouts, and other groups like that. And our success with like getting the local families and things like that involved have been kind of limited, I would say. And, you know, maybe ebbed and flowed a little bit. But I think with like in terms of something to still be working towards, I think that that's something that I've seen actually with the Starfest, and also with the work that I now do with students through University of Utah, is there's always sort of a core group of really activated folks who are inspired and, you know, amazing at what they're doing. And there's also, you know, a challenge I think we have ahead of trying to broaden the umbrella of the scope of the community members who are even aware of some of the efforts, much less involved with them. So even in the case of the Starfest, which has been going on now for more than a decade, has been really consistent and has only grown in scope, there's still kind of, that gap in getting more folks involved from the local level.
It kind of brings to mind the importance of finding the local voice as well, someone that can speak to the neighbors and to in a way that is understandable and accessible and trusted voice. I think I've heard this in other meetings. Finding your champions, that's an important element. And one thing we mentioned in your conversations earlier is how to sensitize people, but being sensitive not to put the cart before the horse. That was a conversation we had earlier. It's like bringing people under the umbrella, as you say, so they have it in their own sense of what affects them. So the education, as Samuel has talked about, making sure that the people are first understanding the element of, what is light pollution and what does it mean to them, and then you can hopefully bring people into the fold on their own. If there's any other any comments that we'd like to hear from the group, I appreciate the comments. Looks like Steve Moore has raised his hand here.
Then yes, and thank you. I'd like to share at least one little piece of motivation as to why we do this and how it can benefit communities at large. I just cracked my September issue of Astronomy magazine just earlier today, and on the very first inside front cover is a full-page ad that the headline is "Astrotourism is Soaring in Flagstaff," and then a whole 2-column description of what Flagstaff has to offer. And it's not lost on me that they are focusing astrotourism at the top of the list. I think this is one of those benefits that could be a big incentive for other communities that want to do this.
Thanks, Stephen. I'd like to kind of complete our discussion today and just welcome you to continue following us through our Quarter Connections meeting. Our next meeting will be December 6th, and the website is still a little sparse, but I have several people that I'm hoping will join us, including lighting designers. I hope to reach out to Brian Bollinger, who is, as Samuel described, has been really instrumental in doing lighting audits in communities and parks. So I welcome you to share in our follow-ups feedback survey any ideas you would like us to cover on the subject of advancements in reducing lighting impacts, where communities should start in if perhaps you have a group of individuals that want to do lighting retrofits, but where to start seems to be a common question. So I hope that will round out our 4 sessions in the course of this year. If you would like to reach out to me at any time, you're welcome to at lisa.stoner@usu.edu. And so at the very end of this meeting, we're going to, after this meeting, we're going to send an email to anyone who's registered or attended a feedback survey. It should only take 3 to 5 minutes. Matthias, if you could actually pop that into the our chat here before we go. It is a link to our feedback survey. We really appreciate your input. Thank you, Matthias. My final thanks to Samuel and Kate. You did a wonderful job today. I learned a lot, and I'm so glad we were able to all come together. Thanks to all our participants today for being with us. I will share the introduction docs on the website and if anyone wants to see these minutes, the chat, I can send those to you separately. So thank you so much. Have a great day. Dark skies for all, and enjoy your fall. Take care.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.